Welcome back, City Builders. Kodiak the Kodiak here. In today's video, we're going to be going over the newest word of the week that came out this Monday, and it might actually be the best word of the week we've seen thus far. Now, before we get started, almost 80% of you who watch my videos are not subscribed. So if you wouldn't mind dropping that subscription, it means a ton. So before we get started, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you can keep up to date with all the City Skylines 2 news, tips, and tricks. Without further ado, let's get started. Okay, now before we get started, I'm going to probably be uploading this video on a Friday. So if you're seeing this is the Friday after this word of the week came out, and I'll actually be live over here on YouTube this Friday, where I'll be playing some Project Zomboid, which is a fun zombie management game. I've been really enjoying it over on Twitch, which you can also find a link to down in the description if that's better for you. On Wednesday, I also did a Project Zomboid stream as well here on YouTube, which you can find over in my live tab, where I was joined by Canadian Moose Plays, who will also be joining me for part of this Friday as it's his birthday. On top of that, something I don't normally pitch or really talk about aside from having it in the intro is that over in my Discord, we have a Discord subscription. This is a lot like Patreon, for example. However, the fees from Discord are actually a lot better for content creators. If you were ever considering supporting me financially throughout my content journey, if you think that my content is worthy of a monthly subscription, that is the best place you can do it. There's a lot of cool and awesome stuff included with those subscriptions, like voting on certain things for the channel and early access updates to what's going to be going on in terms of my content. So if that's something that interests you, head on over to my Discord. Now that that's all out of the way, let's dive into this word of the week, because it genuinely feels like the best one, and it feels like they've finally taken in a lot of the criticism and I guess frustration from the community about the current state of the game, the launch of the game, and are addressing a lot of it with a lot of explanation as to why certain things are the way they are. For those of you wondering, I did not do a breakdown on Word of the Week 13. I'm just genuinely not interested in breaking down a lot of these gameplay systems that we've already kind of seen them talk about in the past. Almost all of these questions that they've been answering in these past Words of the Week have been broken down at one point or another, and I've probably already done a video on them at one point or another as well, and it just feels a little reductive. Also, we're not going to be going over mods or maps today. We'll have a different video for that. Specifically on Sunday, we'll be going over 2 weeks worth of mod and map updates. Normally, I go through and highlight the entire word of the week, so that way we can get to the important bits, but I think this one is worthy of kind of going all the way through and breaking down each part as we go along. So, Colossal Order word of the week number 14. While we've received plenty of questions about City Skylines 2's features, we have also received a ton of questions on topics surrounding the game. Today, we'll go over some of the difficult ones. Are you going to address the content creators' concerns and criticisms? All constructive feedback that we received is valued and very much appreciated. Thank you for those of you who have tagged us and shared content creators' videos that have highlighted feedback that you agree with, and to everyone who took part in the constructive discussions that followed. For example, Biva and City Planner Plays have released videos with useful and constructive criticism that we have gone over with the team. We'll be addressing the feedback according to the process description below. So right here, they go through a feedback process. So this is basically how they treat feedback in terms of their development cycle. And this is pretty common in the realm of game development, and is one of the reasons why I really like this word of the week in general, is because I hope that it opens the eyes of some people in terms of like what's feasible and how development cycles work in video games, because I think a lot of people will sometimes like ask for something very specific and like they won't understand like why it takes so long to implement and do a lot of these things. And that's because a good feedback process that is free from maybe bugs or errors is really, really important. So let's dive through this right here. So they first off start by collecting feedback. Our community team members collect and summarize feedback from players. They then do a design and vision. The feedback is reviewed by our game designers and compared to our vision for the game. So after they collect the feedback, they then have a team that specifically sees how does this fit in with how we are trying to develop the game out. They then determine the improvements. The designers then determine which improvements, if any, can be made based on their design philosophy for the game, what's feasible based on how the game's coded. There's a lot of factors that can actually go into determining what can actually be implemented in the game. Does this take too long? Is there like, this is something we've tried to do before, but it creates a bunch of other issues that we don't have time to currently fix? There's a lot of things that can go into that one. They then prioritize and implement. Improvements are prioritized and assigned to programmers based on their priority. which, as we know, the current lead priority is getting modding and asset importing kind of all working right now. And so there really isn't a ton maybe in terms of like actual gameplay feedback that's actively being worked on, but I'm sure they do have some team members actively working on this stuff, as they've stated in the past few weeks that they do. So then we go into testing, which has a fun little bug image up here. The dev team and QA test the changes to ensure everything was working as intended. So QA is quality assurance people. So the quality assurance team, basically the game testers, and the development team then make sure everything is working and they didn't create another bug. Because that's something that happens a lot in game development, or any like software field, I guess, is that, you know, you might pull a string to fix an issue, right? So like pulling this string might fix the issue, but that string might be connected to 5 other strings. And it's like, oh man, I've created more bugs in this process. So that's really what QA testing is, and make sure that they didn't make any errors or that they actually did fix the issue. So then they reiterate and retest after that. Based on the test findings, we reiterate and retest until we're satisfied with the results. So they might know that they've created more bugs in the process. And this is, again, very typical in game development. So they might have found like, well, you know, we might have created some more bugs in this. Let's see if we can fix some of those. Okay, we've created 2 more bugs, but we've fixed like 6 bugs. We think that this is reasonable, and let's release the results here and let the community have access to this, and just we'll work on these issues on the next patch. So because, you know, those new bugs that they might have created might be like pretty minor. It just might be some visual clipping or something like that, compared to a like core gameplay change that they might have fixed. So again, this is all pretty typical in terms of gameplay development in game development studios. This is kind of how things work. Then they patch the game. When the build is past all required tests, it is released and feedback process restarts. So that's not necessarily saying that they're intentionally releasing the game with bugs, but it is something that happens sometimes, and I'm not alluding to the fact that Colossal Order does that intentionally also. I just want to make that pretty clear. So that is the feedback process. Let's scroll down some more and go through more of what they wrote. Again, this is a lot of text here, but a lot of this is some really good information that I feel like a lot of the City Skylines community has really been asking for in terms of transparency. We've been wanting and dying for transparency from the developers, and not maybe some self-gloating that some people feel the development team has been doing in terms of, no, we made a good game, and the community's like, no, we don't feel like you have. We want you to be transparent about the bugs and the issues that have existed in the game. And I feel like they're really doing that here. So here are some examples of some smaller changes we made since release based on your feedback. Added line color to passenger ships, cargo ships, and cargo train engines, which was not available at first. Improved moving in pathfinding. This prevents citizens from reserving homes from disconnected buildings, or moving into a city at all if it's not connected to an outside connection. And increased all emergency siren sound distances. I didn't even know they changed that, to be quite honest with you. I feel like I remember it being like really far away and you could hear it in the first build of the game. So maybe they did change that now that I think about it. But anyways, let's go on to the next part here. And I believe the more interesting part is the larger changes that we're looking into now based on the community feedback. Land value and zoning suitability. I think a lot of people have been frustrated with maybe the land value system and not really understanding what that is. There is a mod, which I will put down in the description, that kind of does a big land value overhaul that I know City Planner plays, as well as myself, have been using actively in order to fix a lot of that issue. So we'll put that down in the description if that's something that interests you guys until they fix it themselves, but it is something they're looking into. Education system, specifically kids and teens, which is something that they actively did a lot too in the last patch. I've noticed it when I play the game. More transparency in the economic system, balancing subsidies and service importing. Back to the more transparency in the economic system before we move on. They did add a ton of new info view stuff and fixed a lot of the info views that weren't working before. So that is a lot more transparent in the economic system as well. So, and then balancing negative happiness modifiers with the lack of basic utilities, water, sewage, and electricity. How do you plan to get out of this mess? What is in the works for City Skylines 2? What will you do to set things right for the disastrous launch of City Skylines 2? This is, I think, the exact question that a lot of people in the community have been dying for them to address, that they feel like the game is a mess, and that they need some form of recuperance, I guess. I don't know the word I'm really looking for here, in order to feel like they weren't shafted essentially. So this is a question that I feel like a lot of people have been wanting them to answer. So here we go. We'd much rather be in a different position than we are at the moment, but we cannot change the past. And we're working very hard to catch up on the missing modding support, missing platforms, and the content for the Ultimate Edition, and improving performance and fixing bugs this year. The team is divided to work on different tasks so that we're seeing progress on all fronts. And while it might not feel like it's fast enough, I can assure you we're doing the best we can. Only time will tell if it's enough to turn things around. Really important again to remember that the Colossal Order development team is only like 30 to 40 developers. So they are realistically spread pretty thin, and they talk about that in the next paragraph here. There have also been some questions about the patch cadence and why we moved away from weekly patches. Weekly patches are too heavy for us to keep up with, and the issues we are working on need more time than just a few hours or days to fix. We're a small team of 30 developers, and we have plans in the works in a way that creates the fastest results. Again, because they have the development team split up into different groups, and the core major thing they're kind of working on is that modding support, and it does take time. It does take time for them to hit that goal of where they want to be at with modding support. So instead of spending a big part of the week on building deliveries and QA rounds, we can use that time to work on the fixes themselves. For the Ultimate Edition, the DLCs are already in a rough schedule, so we have good opportunities to patch the game at the same time. This doesn't mean that we never patch the game between DLC releases. The goal is to improve the game as quickly as possible, and when we have a solid patch ready and tested, it will be released. A really important thing to remember as well is that frequent patches can be really stressful for mods and the modding community themselves, because those patches might break really important mods that a lot of people might be using. And obviously the developers also have to cross-reference that with the important mods that they know the community is using. They did this with City Skylines 1, and they worked with a lot of the modders to keep those mods updated with one of those bigger later patches that they had for City Skylines 1 right before they announced City Skylines 2. So it's really important to remember that frequent updates would be really bad for modders once official modding support comes out. Obviously, we have Thunderstore available right now that you can go and download mods on, but it is also really important to remember that that's not official support. And when official support comes, that's something that they do need to be mindful of, especially because, you know, they're going to be responsible for mods breaking all the time if they push out constant updates, which leads to an even worse landscape for City Skylines because it is so, the community is so driven by the modding support and asset creators. We are aware we have a mountain to climb on when it comes to delivering and expectations, but we have our ice picks ready and we are surely used to the cold. We're going to keep on climbing and you'll continue to see progress on the game. Their next question here was, why wasn't modding support available at release? The biggest regret we have is that modding support is not yet available for the game. We have been working on it since the beginning of the project, and we intend to have it fully ready at release. Code modding, support, map, and asset editing were all planned to be fully usable and the mods shareable in one place. We still believe that offering modding support makes any game better, and that the tools and mods should be available for all players to enjoy at no additional cost. Again, they're reiterating here, this is something that Maddie addressed on the Paradox live streams that they do every week a few weeks ago, but that modding support will never cost money. This was something that a lot of people were fearful of. I saw a lot of people fear-mongering it in my comments for a while when they were moving over to PDX mods because they didn't have any awareness of what this was and why it was happening, but they're never going to charge for mods because they already kind of do that with the content creator packs, which are official DLC asset packs. So they don't really have a reason to do that when they're already have a really reasonable revenue path for that already exists, where they can work with community members, support them, and make money off of it at the same time. During the project, we faced and still continue to face technical difficulties that affect the speed and quality of development, especially performance. We simply ran out of time, and the focus had to shift from modding support to all hands on deck to fix performance. All this work is still ongoing. As far as I understand it, from just people I know who have... I feel weird talking about this in my YouTube videos because I usually talk about this in my Twitch streams where I feel like it's a little bit looser and I can say stuff like this. But in my YouTube videos, I like to be a little bit more serious and confirmed. I don't say stuff on here unless I know it for a fact. But I've heard from multiple people who talk to people actively inside Colossal Order that the dev team was very, very frustrated that they could not get modding support done in time due to the issues that they were experiencing towards the last year of development of the game. They realized that it was just not going to be possible, and that severely frustrated the development team. They've talked about it a lot. I know a lot of people maybe are skeptical or cynical or just don't genuinely care, but the developers were very frustrated and understand the importance of modding, especially in a game like City Skylines, for example, that was one of the largest Steam workshops for mods out there. And to go to the next game and not have that official support ready, even they recognize that that was bad. The one thing that they don't really address in this at all is like maybe delaying the game. But an important thing to remember too is that they did have contracts with, obviously their publisher Paradox, but they also had a contract with Game Pass, and we have no idea what those contracts stipulated, and they might not have been able to delay the game just due to their contracts that they currently had active to publish the game or, have the game available on certain platforms. But that's not really something that they addressed in this, and is one of the few things that I feel like they should potentially address maybe in the coming weeks with these Word of the Weeks, because I really like how transparent they've been thus far in how this Word of the Week is written. We'll be communicating more on the status of modding soon. It's not an ideal situation, but we are committed to working on this part of the game because it means so much to you and to us. A Colossal Order game is a moddable one, is a promise that we have made to ourselves years ago, and work is very hard to keep. Yeah, I don't feel like it was ever intended for them to not have modding support. I think that's like clear, because they were pitching Paradox mods from the very beginning of the game that, hey, we're going to have modding support. It's going to be first party Paradox mods. So it's obvious, at least to me, that they know and want modding support to exist. It's just, there's some issues going on the back end that need to be cleared up before that can actually happen. And we'll top off today's Word of the Week with a few quick questions. More animations to come, construction, firemen, etc. That's a question I've actually seen a lot. Yes, in the future, we'll be adding more animations to bring details and life to cities. When we will have cycle paths on City Skylines 2. I don't know when we'll get around to them, but City Skylines 2 will have bikes and bike paths. Now, I saw a lot of people speculating a lot of things about bikes, but I wanted to pull up this post from 4 months ago, which actually is the CEO from Colossal Order talking about bikes here. And I think CEO, after the AMA, now understands how important bikes are. And this is something I've known, again, from talking to people who know people inside of Colossal Order specifically, that bikes were almost ready for release. And so let's read this first, and then I can maybe clarify a bit more. I must clarify this, as I was the one saying bikes are not on the roadmap. In truth, bikes have been on the roadmap, as we have already made the bike assets and plan to have them done a while back. However, the character work got delayed, and we don't have the animations for the citizens to ride bikes. We decided to postpone the work on the bikes, and with other things having to be worked on more urgently, the bikes were not forgotten, have been pushed further down the road. So when I refer to the feature not being on the roadmap, I simply meant it's not actively being worked on at the moment. Motorcycle rides don't need to pedal, and that's all I'm saying. It might also be a nice opportunity to build more features around the bikes, so we'll see what we come up with. In any case, bikes are coming up down the line. There's a few important things in this I want to address. So first off, where she talks about they already made the bike assets. The rumor that I had heard from people who talk to people, was that bikes were essentially done as a feature and that they couldn't get the animations done in time. And when they hit I don't know if this coincides with the tech review or not, but from my understanding, when they hit the tech review, they just kind of decided that let's not include bikes at launch because the feature itself is done, and this will be something that once we get all the core features in, we can quickly implement. So this goes in line with the rumor that I had heard about bikes as well, which was that bikes as a feature are basically done and that they couldn't get the citizens to properly utilize them and basically jump on their bikes. The riding animations weren't done. They just couldn't get the animations done in time. It was essentially how I understood it. And then once they get the animations done, they then have to implement it fully, and that all takes time. But the core feature of bikes is functionally done, and it's just kind of sitting there waiting. But then when they talk about the feature not being on the roadmap, I simply meant that it's not actively being worked on at the moment. This is an important thing to understand when we listen to the language that Colossal Order tells us about certain features, and we'll see that in the Word of the Week here in a few seconds when we jump back to it, where they talk about stuff that's not being worked on. So let's remember that for a second, and let's dive back into the Word of the Week really quickly. Will you add more types of buildings or special buildings. Yes, there will be more buildings, both free and paid for the game in the future. If there is something specific you hope to see, we'd love to hear it. Question, will we get actual keys like the ones in City Skylines 1? This sounds like it'd be a great fit with the harbor-themed Bridges and Ports DLC coming later this year. So that's a hint that's something that's coming with the Bridges and Ports DLC, is that you'll get like standalone key walls with that DLC. When will we get props? Adding props to the menus for free placement in the game has come up as a request quite often. This is not something we're actively looking into at the moment, but will be added to the wish list. And this is where I'd like to stop for a minute, because when I first read this, I was very frustrated because I was like, I understand that maybe a lot of casual players, I think there's three different types of players that play City Skylines, right? There's your hardcore detailers, there's your traffic management people, and then there's more casual players who are just like kind of enjoying the chillness of like slowly building out a city and maybe managing it in a way. Maybe there's like micromanagement of cities, but like the game isn't complex enough to really have something like that. So those are kind of like the three categories I like to think of as City Skylines players. So you have your detailers, maybe they go into heavy with mods, maybe they don't, but they utilize props, right? They're traffic managers. If they fall into multiple categories, maybe they will use props still, but if you just play the game from a traffic management perspective, you probably don't utilize the props. So at first when I saw this, I was like, okay, I get it from that perspective. Maybe there is an abundance of people that they have found in terms of like polling people that like, you know, maybe the majority of players don't actually even touch these vanilla props, right? But at the end of the day, a huge hardcore section of their audience and content creators who promote the game for them utilize these props. And are they really going to just sit back and only allow their modders to take care of that? That just seems silly to me. I guess maybe because it's first party, like I initially thought like I was very cynical of this. I was like, this is crazy. This is crazy that this wasn't on your roadmap. That's unrealistic. But then after reading that bike post from 4 months ago, and when they say it's not on their roadmap, so like right here, it's not something we're actively looking into at the moment, that doesn't mean they don't intend on doing it. It just means they're not actively working on that. And I think that makes it really hard to speculate now what is actively being worked on and how long it'll take for them to implement it if they say something isn't being worked on, actively looked at, or isn't on the roadmap, because they might have already worked on part of that and stopped due to the other issues going on with the game. So I just feel like that's a really important piece of language, and it made me less skeptical about this, but it just goes along these same line that I kind of have been feeling with City Skylines 2 so far, is the idea that these words of the week, and especially the language that's being used by the developers, is not super great for us as the community members to understand unless we have all of these individual context informations. So I hope that's something that they improve on a lot going forward, is more transparency, a lot like this word of the week, but I hope that they even get better with it and give us even more explanations into things, because as you can tell here at the bottom, and we're not done yet, but as you can tell here by the bottom, the reactions to this word of the week have been significantly better on the PDX forums here than previous weeks. So let's dive over to some previous weeks now. So we'll go back here to word of the week 13 here, and you can see this is overwhelmingly not happy from the community. We can go to the word of the week 12 maybe here as well, and this one still has some X's, but this was the first time they started like kind of delving into other stuff. If we go to word of the week 11 here, this one was pretty good. This was when they started really doing that, and people were like, yeah, that's kind of cool. I kind of like that. This one was pretty well received, and I hope that they understand that with these, the more transparent they are, the more well-received they'll be, and is kind of what the community wants them to do. They want them to address these issues head on, and I really hope that they continue to do that. And I hope that they also simplify some of the language and are transparent about things like props. Like, I would love to know if they were actively working on props or if they never planned on including them in the base game, because I think that that's absolutely crazy that they weren't considering putting props in the base game, which is something that I would argue maybe half of the players, or maybe a little less even. I don't know that everybody is a big detailer, but a lot of people are, and I think it's a core part. And I think some of the vanilla props make it easy for people who are playing vanilla to detail their cities, which is something that I think a lot of people currently are a little frustrated by, that we have to go into dev mode in the object menu just to place some cool looking assets in our cities. So let's go through these last few here. When will the land value issue be fixed? In the next update, we'll have part of it fixed, but the issues are tied to the economy and it'll take a bit longer to be resolved still. I believe this is more of like that string idea that I was talking about earlier. When they pull one string, there's a lot more that starts to get pulled from the back end, and they have to fix all of that in order to solve the core issue. So it's a little bit more complex than that. Will there be more biomes like wetlands, jungle, or a desert like Texas? At first, I thought this was potentially a hint, like, oh, are we gonna get like a Texas-themed biome? I think that would be pretty cool if for American builds or just any kind of like arid environment. But I did learn that these are direct quotes from questions, so like that doesn't. It's not actually a hint, which I was a little disappointed about because I was like, ooh, a nice little teaser for something, but I don't think that is the case. But they did say, yes, we plan to add more maps with different biomes and also assets for you to create your own. I really hope the beach pack has some like palm trees or just some stuff to help make the maps feel more tropical. Anyways, they end here by saying thank you all for the questions, as well as the constructive criticism and feedback. It's valued appreciation. Keep them coming. We'll be back next week with something different. Words from the art team. Sincerely, Marina. And I really hope that they're more transparent. I hope that more of them are like this. I'm not sure what the words of the art team entails, but I hope maybe the week after that they face more of these questions head on, because I think this is what a lot of the community has been asking for. Like, please address the concerns that the community has. And I feel like they've done that this week. And as you can tell by the reactions down here, I think people have been receiving this pretty well compared to a lot of the other words of the week. So let me know how you guys feel down in the comments. I'm sure a bunch of you will still probably not be happy with the current state of the game and maybe with Colossal Order, but I'm hoping to see more people come to at least an understanding of like the state of the game from this, kind of like what I did in a way, because I really appreciate the fact that they were at least fully transparent. And I think if we as a community encourage that, we'll see more of it as well, which I think all of us are kind of dying for at this point. So that's going to be it from me today. I'll let you guys get on with the rest of your day. I've been Kodiak the Kodiak, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Deuces.